I'm going to ask the others to try to keep their responses short because I want to have a lot of time for the questions from the audience. There's a lot coming through already. And this is just a reminder to everybody out there, if you have a question, please make sure you either put it on the Facebook or Zoom chat or tweet at Yale is using the hashtag C19 responses. Mushfiq, again, I know we don't have a lot of time, but one of the specific potential places where we might see is from the gender divide that we see in phone ownership. And so the latest numbers we have are that about 7% of men have phones, only 67% of women. Curious how you would address these sort of things if we move towards more of a digitally oriented approach.
Yeah, so as we discussed earlier, definitely there are going to be lots of exclusion risks that we need to pay special attention to, and gender is certainly up there as one of the most important dimensions. And there are others that Sabinava mentioned as well. And I think okay, so I'll give you a technical answer first, but then I'll broaden it. The technical answer is that like the advantages of using this kind of data analytics-based approach is that you can test what you're doing and how it works. So for example, in order to implement this approach, remember I said that we have to merge in data from the mobile service providers, which is an important input, along with survey data where we have the ground truth information also, right? And that ground truth information includes things like gender and other aspects of people's disadvantages, right? And so once we have a model, and let me try to simplify the thing and say, imagine that we have 15,000 households on whom we have the ground truth information. We can divide that up into, let's run the model and train the machine learning algorithm on only 11,000 of them. And then we leave 4,000 as a testing area, right? So we see what kind of predictions the machine makes. We see what it would do for those 4,000. And then we can compare it to the reality to see how well it's doing, right? So there you can, intuitively, what you can identify are things like, oh, is it that systematically women are less likely to be picked up, right? Or any other group that you care about. So one can test and then adjust the algorithm in order to fill in the gaps in the system, right? So that's a general approach that we will take, and in the interest of time, I won't go into more detail, right? And Sabina also mentioned, that messaging is going to be very important, right? And here we've already thought through, there's not only this machine learning thing, there's also sort of a behavioral science component of all of this. So for example, in the work we're doing in Nigeria, the vice president's office there wants us to add some kind of conditionality, right? So you can imagine, when you send money to people, you can, and you know their phone number, you can send an SMS and saying, look, this is money to support you so that you can stay at home, so that you don't have to, you can maintain social distancing more easily, right? And we can add a soft conditionality on that. And then once you do that, you can also send SMS messages back to them saying, reminder, it's like, look, it looks like you're moving around, or like I'm not giving you specific answers here, but whatever it is that the government and the civil society is comfortable with and want to do, the technology does permit this, right? And another set of issues is about privacy concerns, and I'm sure that's going to come up. I'm sure it has already in the questions. And we are trying to set up a system such that there's data merging happening where survey teams from Innovations for Poverty Action, they own some of the data, and then the mobile service provides some of the data. We're putting that together, and we're asking computer scientists to process it. And we're putting in a system so that no single institution or entity has access to all the information. And everybody has the minimum amount of information with personal identifiable indicators erased, right? So that we can maintain data privacy as much as possible. And finally, let me just say one thing that came from Anirbhai. I have to give him credit for this, right? So when we were discussing this and setting up the system, Anirbhai's thing was, hey, you've been saying to me, and it was embarrassing for me, you've been telling us about like running experiments and randomized control trials all these years, right? Why don't we set this up as a trial on a trial basis? I was like, yes, that idea should have come from me. So what we plan to do is not to take an entirely new system that's untested and roll it out nationwide all at once. What we would like to do is maybe pick 50 Upajila where we try this out, and then we have other 50 as a comparison point where we do the traditional method, right? And then as soon as you do that, you can start collecting data on on how are people reacting. We can do this in the same places where we're doing our phone surveys, so that it's easy to quickly collect data. And the following week, we can report back, how do people feel in this, under this new system? Are they happy? Are they content? Do they feel like there's mistargeting, right? We can also collect data directly on food security to see if the system in objective terms is working as well or not. And then on the basis of that evidence, then we can choose to move forward. And as Sabina mentioned, at that point, in those same places where we run these experiments, we can also add a much more hands-on anthropological approach to data collection. Right? And this is what's wonderful about webinars and like this, is that we make these new connections. And I mean, every opportunity I get every hour these days, I'm trying to make connections and learn more and see what we can do next. So.
That's great. To all the academic institutions out there, I think Mushfiq gets like an honorary PhD in anthropology, and Nearby gets one in economics. There's like a lot